Davi Yadua Uborur. It's known, it's a known fact, and it's borur. It's clear beyond clarity. That the love for God is not embedded, inextricably attached to one's heart. You have to continuously be immersed in it continuously, karoi, appropriately. And all that you have in your mind, the only thing you have in your mind is that love for God. All you think about is Him. As it says in the Shema, with all your heart, with all your soul. What is one who loves God? Knowing Him. Loving God is you want to know who He is. Das Dehu. I mean, who do you want to know? You know, we talk about curiosity. We're not talking about curiosity here. If I say to you, this is one of a kind of deal, but you got to go look for the deal yourself. And I give you all the indicators to identify the deal. And you know this deal will make a difference in your life. You're not going to leave a stone unturned until you find that deal. So God wants He's going with an understanding, I want to know Him. And as much as I want to know Him better. Because if He is that, that's the ultimate. It's worth living for that purpose alone. And based on that knowledge of knowing God, that would be the basis of the love. Imat, ma'at, im harbe harbe, to whatever. Everybody has his own capacity. You'll be touched to the way you're meant to be touched. It's, you know, some people say, the more I know Him, the more I love Him. We're not talking love between a man and a woman. We're talking avashet pli bedover. It's the more I know Him, you know, how do you differentiate between a great person and an ordinary person? You know, very often first impressions are the greatest impression. You meet a person, overly impressed. But as you get to know him, that first impression wasn't really accurate. You begin to see cracks. You begin seeing the moles and the warts. But a person's truly great. You're impressed initially, or maybe you're not impressed. But the more you get to know him, it's beyond your expectation of him being impressed. And as you get to know him more and more, it's unceasing. You're unceasingly impressed. And it keeps advancing. There's a book I recommended. It was put out by Art Scroll on the 25th anniversary of the passing of Moshe Feinstein. Today's his yahrzeit. He passed away on Tainus Esther. You read that book, as much as you read about that man, you can't imagine who he was and what he contained, knowledge-wise, behavior-wise, between man and God, between man, and every aspect of his life was something not to be believed. You got to be amazed. If you took 1,000 people, put them together, they wouldn't equal one Reb Moshe Feinstein. I'm not even talking about his knowledge, just his dimension of person. He was a true giant. Something, you pick up that book, the more you read, if you have an understanding of what people are and what they should be, this is the gift to the world. As they say, you know, he's a gift to humanity. Whether you know it or not doesn't make a difference. I told over a story. The leading Torah sage pre-World War II, his name was Reb Chaim Ozer, Grzinski. He was in Vilna. Reb Chaim Grozin was recognized by all the Torah sages as being head and shoulders above everyone. He was a person, a dimension. He had a photographic memory. He had a library of 50,000 Svarim books. Everything was committed to memory. There was nothing, everything. He met thousands of people in his lives. He could recall the conversation, everything. So it was before the war. So the United States government sent over somebody from the State Department. He was a Jew, assimilated Jew, and to see what's going on in Vilna. This is when Vilna was still part of the neutral, before the Nazis occupied Lithuania. And Vilna was a free city. And I don't recall his name. Look it up. And his name was Dr. Smith. He had a PhD in something, Dr. Smith. Larry will Google it, okay? And he went and he met Reb Chaim Ozer. Man was a assimilated Jew. And Reb Chaim Ozer had a housekeeper. She was an old widow. And she needed orthopedic shoes, which she couldn't get it in Europe. This is like, we're talking about 2 years before, or a year before, Vilna was overtaken by the Nazis, before he passed away. So when Dr. Smith was overly impressed with him as a person, I mean, his knowledge, insights, and everything. It wasn't the things he didn't anything understand. But what most impressed him was, he says, you're going back to the United States and you're coming back in a few months. This lady, she needs orthopedic shoes. I can't get them here. Could we have a feet measured here? And when you go back to the United States, have a pair of orthopedic shoes made for her. Could you imagine? Talk about a giant. The whole world's on his shoulders. And he's concerned about this old widow who needs orthopedic shoes to be fitted. It blew him away. Because of that level of concern, at that level, ultimately, he became a Baal Tshuva. This Dr. Smith became a fully observant Jew. His family became observant. Just displaying that little bit of what specialness that he was like amazed. A man of your dimension. You're concerned about this little unnoticeable woman. What need? Because she has bunions and her feet are misshaped and she needs all. That's his concern. That's no less of a concern than the greater concerns. So the Rambam says, based on knowing to a degree that you know him, that's going to determine the Ava. Because the more you know him, the more you're going to love him. But some people less, some people more, because that's based on the person's emotional, intellectual makeup, whether it's more or less. You visit the old neighbor in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem. There's a street called Rehov Shmuel Salant. Yeah, the street's called Shmuel Salant. Who was Shmuel Salant? He was the chief rabbi of the old community of Yerushalayim, chief rabbi of Jerusalem, the old community, for about more than 60 years, 70 years. Passed away, he was about 99. Passed away like at the very beginning of the 1900s. And in the latter part of the 19th century, the Jews in Yerushalayim were at a level of poverty, they barely had what to eat. And there was all kinds of plagues. There was diphtheria, people died of starvation. And they had people were very holy people there. Because all they did, they were immersed in Torah day and night. And so how did they support the community? Jews from Europe would come and visit, and they would send money, and that would support the community of Yerushalayim, who they were all Talmidei Chachamim, committed to doing God's work. one of these wealthy people come, and Rabbi Shmuel Salant, who's the chief rabbi, is engaged in speaking to one of these young Torah scholars. If you looked at this young Torah scholar, he was wearing a threadbare kaftan. He looked emaciated because he didn't have much to eat. And Rabbi Shmuel Salant is engaged in very deep Talmudic conversation with him. This rich man is waiting to speak to the great rabbi. And he's getting a little impatient because a man of his wealth doesn't wait very long. And Rabbi Shmuel Salant is not paying attention to this rich man waiting, and he's engaged in this conversation with this younger Torah scholar. It reaches a point, he explodes, this rich man. And he goes and he berates this young Torah. He can't criticize the rabbi. So he attacks the young Torah scholar. You're nothing. You're a beggar. And he used every adjective on him to denigrate him and belittle him and so on and so forth. Rav Shmuel Salant becomes livid, becomes irate. He says, do you know what you're talking about? What this man is worth, you'll never be worth for the rest of your life. And you want to know something? You can take your money, go back to Europe. We don't need your money here. If you don't understand and appreciate what we represent, take it back. The man was like frozen in shock. He walked out in a daze. It wasn't what the rabbi said to him. Rabbi Shmuel was a holy rabbi, known as one of the leading Torah sages. And he was a man already in his upper 80s, 90s. And he goes back to his hotel and he thinks over what he did. That really what he did was unacceptable. If the rabbi's talking to this person, evidently that person is a person worthwhile talking to. And who is he to actually to interfere and embarrass and berate and denigrate this Torah scholar? He came back, asked forgiveness. But that was because what was his evaluation? It's the way he looked. Does he look the role? Doesn't he look the role? Threadbare clothing, emaciated look. Now, so what is he? What's he worth? The person was a rich man. He wanted to have a special son-in-law. And it was done what we call shidduchim, matchmaking. So he goes to the rabbi, he says, I want the best quality son-in-law. He should be a Talmud Chacham, Torah scholar, be an observant Jew. That's what, and I'm willing to underwrite his livelihood, because the person was a man of means. So the rabbi says, give me 2 days and we'll have a meeting at my house and you bring your daughter and she'll meet the person. So she brings the daughter, the man, and the person was a young man, and he already at that age was head and shoulders, and he became a future Torah sage, leading Torah sage in the world, this person. And the daughter sees this young man. It's not exactly what she was looking for. Thin, his eyes were bloodshot, he didn't sleep much, wasn't dressed fashionably. So after his daughter walks out, he says to the rabbi, I'll come back later, we'll discuss it. He says, doesn't meet my daughter's standards. I don't think it's for my daughter. Okay? He says, come back in a day. He goes to the butcher. The butcher's son had a son who used to work in the butcher shop with him. Health, specimen of health, red cheeks, dressed in a way that would be fashionable. And the person was the wealth man, knew that it was the butcher's son. He walks in and he sees his future son-in-law, prospective son, is the butcher's son. He was insulted. He got me. He says, "Look, you wanted a healthy, robust-looking person. This is the guy. He meets your criteria. He has the pounds. He has the weight. He has the look. Because what the other person was, you didn't appreciate the look. Because all you're looking is for the look. This person has the look. The other one, but the other person has what it takes. This guy knows how to cut a piece of meat. That's about all." And swallow it and chew it because he's young enough, he still has his teeth. Okay. So how do you evaluate who is, who's not? Laura tells us that if a Talmid Chacham wants to marry, see, he's not really an expert on what's good looking, what's not good as a wife. See, she taken Amoritz with him in ignoramus, who's not knowledgeable in Torah, but he's knowledgeable in worldly affairs and what is, and present the girl before this other person with him, and ask this person, is she good looking enough? Would I be attracted to her? Because he's not really a maven. The Talmid Chacham, being immersed in the books all the years, he's not an expert in this. He may choose something which he's not going to be satisfied with. So if the Amoret says she's the girl, look-wise, then he should marry her. So certain people have certain expertise, in looks and other things. You want to get married, you take your friend to get this tailor-made suit because you got to pick fabric. Are you an expert on fabric? He's the expert on fabric. He goes to the pre-Barney sale, pre-sack sale. He sees it before they show it to the public. So he's the expert. But that's where it begins. That's where it ends very often. The person has to prepare himself and to exclusively be focused, to understand and to be intelligent. You have to be proficient in all the areas of wisdom and branches of knowledge, of science, which inform you of who your maker is. Could you imagine? A person's an astronomer. We look in the sky, we see stars. Do we know what galaxies are? Do we know formations of stars? Do we know the zodiac? We don't know anything. But if you know that, and you know that plus, you know medicine, you know mathematics, and you're pretty much very knowledgeable in many areas of science. And you say, it's amazing. And God created all this. And they say you're blown away. You're impressed. The more you're impressed with God as God, the more you want to know him. You're attracted to him. Who you can be attracted to some person who's a zero. Lavdil. It's only, he says, therefore a person should exclusively be focused to understand and comprehend the branches of wisdom and the areas of knowledge which inform him of who his maker is. Based on the capacity that he's able to understand. And to comprehend. King Solomon was the wisest man who ever lived. And he wrote Koheles. How does Koheles begin? Everything is vain. It's the vanity of vanity. It's all nonsense. Could you imagine? Person doesn't have two nickels to rub together. And you go to Bill Gates and he says, all this, what you've accomplished, it's all worth zero. It's all trash. It has no value. So Gates looks at this guy. He says, what do you understand what value? You don't even know what a nickel is. You don't have two nickels to rub together. You're telling me what I have is nonsense. If you'd be on my level and have what I had, and your conclusion is it's nothing, it's vanity, is one thing. But you don't even begin understanding what it is. So how are you in a position to pass judgment that it's all vanity? You know what King Solomon says? I am Shlomo, King of Yerushalayim. I have everything. I have wealth. Nobody has my wealth. I have assets. Nobody has my assets. I have orchards. I have vineyards. I have stables of horses. I have everything that which is not even fathomable to know what he has, plus the wisdom. And I'm telling you, it's all vanity. It's vain to the nth degree. King Solomon is saying that's why he introduces it. Who I am. That's who I am. And I'm telling you, being the expert in everything, at the end of the day, it's all zero. That unless it's for a purpose, but if it's for an end unto itself, it has no value whatsoever. More or less, the more you have, the more headache you have, the more worry you have. You got to hedge against inflation. You have just enough to get by. You don't have a hedge against anything.